Now, often on Moneybox, we report about firms closing down their good pension schemes, the ones that pay a proportion of your salary for each year you've been in the scheme. But this week, we report on a firm that's starting a new pension scheme that offers just that, a pension for the rest of your life linked to your pay at work. These pension schemes are called defined benefit because the amount of the pension is guaranteed. Bromford Housing Group is offering it to more than 1,000 staff. This 50-year-old organisation provides nearly 30,000 homes for people in central England. I went to Aylesbury, where it houses 300 homeless people. Selina Viermichik showed me around.
We have 105 units, we have family units, we have single units and shared units. So we have people, I would say around 300 people at the minute altogether.
Wow, can we go and have a look?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, we can go through and have a look.
And just tell me why the people are here, what's happened to them in the past.
Yeah, so we have people who are classed by the local authority as homeless. So instead of sending them to bed and breakfast and kind of making it harder for the families, they send to us and they can kind of, be a bit more relaxed, have a, self-contained space as well, so not sharing any kitchen or bathroom when you have younger children and things.
OK, so we've got entrance to this flat, we're just going in. Thanks very much. We've got a kitchen here with a washing machine, fridge, and then off that is...
Yeah, so this is the living space.
And back through the hall and into this other room, which is the children's bedroom with double bunk beds. It's
really lovely seeing some people's faces, because obviously if you've been rough sleeping or if you've been out in the cold, it is such a big change to have, something nice and warm and, to call your own for a bit.
Selina, we're here to talk really about your pension scheme, though. Thank you so much for showing us around. It's very interesting. Are you in the pension scheme?
Yes, I am, yes. So the company provided us with a roadshow, so they visited all the offices, and we had an independent advice as well, so we were all advised on what kind of pensions, schemes we can join. So, yes, I've joined one.
And which one is it?
The benefit one.
The defined benefit scheme?
Yes, the defined benefit one. My pension is still far ahead and everything, but I think it's good to start thinking about it as early as you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm Lee Gibson. I'm the Chief Finance Officer from Bromford Housing.
Now, Lee, I believe that you're creating a new defined benefit pension scheme. Tell me first why you're doing that.
Well, historically, we've had a range of pensions available to employees, and some of these are the gold-plated final salary schemes, etc., which are quite common in the industry. But these are only available to people who joined many years ago, and new membership closed some 10 years or so ago. So we had a mismatch of pensions across Bromford, and what we tried to do is standardise those pensions to give all employees one single offering, which includes both defined benefit and defined contribution.
So when your new scheme starts, you will be paying in yourselves as an organisation, and the staff will be paying in. What will you be paying in?
Well, Bromford are going to maximise the contributions to the pension scheme for each employee at 10% of their salary. Depending on what option the employee takes, depending on what accrual rate they want, they'll either put in 5% of their salary or 15% of the salary. 5% of their salary buys them 120th career average defined benefit scheme.
So that means that for each year they work, they'll get a 120th of their pay as a pension. So if they were here 30 years, they'd be getting a quarter of their pay as a pension.
Correct. We're also offering an 80th scheme. Obviously, that benefit's a lot higher, so therefore the cost of providing that scheme is a lot higher. In that scenario, Bromford put in 10% and the employee puts in 15%.
Your assessment is that if you and the employees pay in at those rates, the new scheme won't have a deficit.
Correct. That said, we'll be monitoring the scheme every 3 years to make sure no deficits are accruing. If there are deficits accruing, we have the option of increasing the contributions to repay those deficits, or worst case, if we simply find it's unaffordable going forward for the employees and the employer, then we have the option of closing them at some future date.
Why did you decide to take this unusual step of creating a new defined benefit scheme?
Defined benefit contains risk. The risk occurs because you don't properly fund them. Okay, so private sector typically underfund them historically, end up with big deficits, and they go, oh, surprise, surprise, we've got a big deficit here, we should close the schemes to save it growing. I think if you understand the risks of defined benefit and fund them correctly and monitor that deficit, you shouldn't end up in that position.
You've taken this unusual step. Do you have any message for people listening who might be running businesses and thinking, what should we do?
Well, the reason we've done it is to try and give the best options to our employees. It should help with retention, it should help with employee morale, employee motivation.
So you take the slightly old-fashioned view, if you like, that a good pension helps with recruitment and retention of staff.
It's a real differentiator in the market, so yes, it does.
Lee Gibson of Bromford Housing Group. Well, let's listen now to Hilary Salt. She's Senior Actuary at First Actuarial in our Salford studio. Hilary Salt, your firm advised Bromford on their scheme. If it's that simple to get defined benefit schemes, why are so many closing down?
Well, I think it's important to notice that some of these new defined benefits schemes that we're seeing, and we are seeing a few, BT is the other one that's been in the news recently, are often very different to the old schemes. They often have lower accrual rates. They often only pension your salary up to a certain cap. And they often have higher pension ages, perhaps linked to state pension ages. So they are more affordable than perhaps the traditional defined benefit scheme you're thinking of.
And taking some of the risk out of it. You mentioned BT. What others are there? I mean, is this part of a movement?
I think it would be too much to say it's a flood of new schemes, but we're certainly seeing a lot of green shoots in fallow fields. I did think would be fallow for a generation, I admit.
So people are realising perhaps that the other sort of scheme called defined contribution, where you put your money in, you never quite know what you're going to get, people are beginning to realise the shortcomings of those, and they want some sort of guarantee.
That's right, and defined benefit is often really important to cover those necessities of life. People can use DC, which is more flexible, to cover those more lumpy luxury spending items, but people do need a guaranteed level of income in retirement.
And how firm is this guarantee? We sometimes hear this word and think, oh, it can't really be guaranteed. Is it really an absolute guarantee for life of a certain amount of money?
It isn't. With all defined benefit, there's some risk, and clearly in the event of an employer insolvency, people can lose an element of their pension. But don't forget, we do now have the Pension Protection Fund, which means that nobody loses all of their pension in the same way that they used to.
And Lee also made the point that it was good for his business, that it encourages your staff. And the other point he made to me later on was that if you have a poor pension, it actually means people don't retire. They stick around perhaps longer than you'd wish them to.
That's absolutely the case. A lot of employers are realising now that with inadequate DC, trying to
defined
manage
contribution schemes.
Correct. Managing people out of the business is quite difficult. And I think you maybe suggested it was a bit old-fashioned to be paternalistic, but I think people are often paternalistic for very commercial reasons. If they've invested heavily in an employee's training, it's important to keep those people.
And very briefly, it is a bit of an expense, though, isn't it? They're more expensive to run.
They are more expensive to run, but because you have that layer of administration and trustees, you are more able to hold the financial services industry to account.
Hilary Salt, thanks very much.